Well, welcome everyone. Amy and I are super excited to have this conversation with you today. So we'll start off by doing some brief introductions. Then we'll talk about the goals of the conversation, and then we will jump right into our discussion, talking about leadership beliefs. So I'll start off. I'm Mary Axelsen. I'm the founder of WeMaax Consulting, and I work with individuals and organizations on elevating their performance and impact. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mary. I'm Amy Wood. I'm a psychologist, and Mary and I have known each other a very long time. I focus on leadership development quite a bit, and Mary and I have over the years talked about leadership development a lot and came up with this idea of human-centered leadership just after the pandemic because leadership had changed so dramatically. We really realized there's a need for a whole new way of thinking about leadership to be effective. And we'll be talking today about some of the beliefs that comprise human-centered leadership.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Maureen?
Hi, I'm Maureen Chiana. I'm in the UK. I'm the founder of the Mindsight Academy, and I work with anything to do with brains. I'm a master neuroplastician. So everything I do is about the brain, neuroplasticity, how the brain works and how it impacts everything we do. Decisions, communication, literally everything. So yeah, it's great to be here and really excited about the conversation tonight.
Thanks, Maureen. And Donna?
Hi, I'm Donna Galuzzo. I'm currently a real estate broker, which is a very dramatic career departure from the many careers I've had. Up until now, my career threads have been mostly in education, higher education, media arts, and I've been the executive director of a lot of nonprofits in Portland. And I'm the co-founder as well of my current real estate team. And that's 3 women leading a team, and we're very excited to be working together. This conversation is so appropriate for where I'm at in my life, so I'm excited to be participating.
Great. And I love it because the 4 of us have a combination of working in organizations and then also being women-led founder organizations too. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes.
Like talk about our goals.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're going to talk about beliefs from the perspective of how they need to change in order for leaders to be more effective. As we mentioned, leadership has changed dramatically since the pandemic hit, and we were going in this direction anyway, but the pandemic just sped us up a little bit. And the direction that we're going in, what I mean by that is less hierarchical, more flexibility with leadership, more, when we say human-centered, it's more about the whole person, not compartmentalizing the worker and then the person at home, because that dividing line between home and work has been obliterated. And it was going to happen anyway because of technology, but we got thrust into this whole new way of working and leading because the pandemic really moved things very, very quickly along in that direction. So we're going to look at today, last time we did this, part 1, we looked at 3 leadership beliefs, the before and after, the leadership beliefs that are antiquated from before the pandemic, and the new beliefs that Mary and I advocate for effective leadership. So we're going to continue today with the second half of those 6 beliefs, starting with this belief. We're going to ask our panelists here what they think of these beliefs and what they think about the new one versus old, and how they see the new belief and the old belief for each of these examples at play and what they do. Great. So number 1 belief we're going over today, success means working long hours while balancing home and work equally. That's the old belief that surprisingly, and actually it's disturbing in a way to think that many organizations still believe in this belief and are leading from this belief, when it's really virtually impossible now to split work and home and balance them evenly. And the other thing that's changed here, implied in this belief, is that working long hours is the way to be productive. And we believe that it's not about the long hours, it's about being efficient with your hours. So the new belief is I organize my life to align with my ambition, values, and energy. So it's more about the individual deciding what are my preferred ways to perform at my best, rather than it being dictated from the top. And working with your energy, how much energy do you have? Making sure your work aligns with your values and your ambition.
So
So,
I think,
Mary, you want to take
yeah,
it from here?
yeah. Thanks so much, Amy, for that great intro. So Donna and Maureen, we're really interested to hear how you see that showing up, right? That we have this belief that somehow we're compartmentalized people and we're supposed to have this equal division of home and work, right? Yeah, we're really integrated people who show up as our whole selves, no matter what our environment is. And we have these multi-connection relationships. So how do you see the myth of equal division of time between home and work kind of wreaking havoc as far as our work environments is concerned? And what things or adjustments have you made to your leadership so that you have a more integrated whole person approach? Donna or Maureen, who would like to go first?
Maureen, you want to start?
Okay. I think for me, it's interesting when we talk about balance, because when we really look at life, what is balance? And life is always up and down. So there's nothing like everything being in equilibrium. Even our bodies are not in that actual equilibrium, but it tries to bring it back. So when it talks about balance, one of the things, the key things I would always say is your own mindset. And you're right, maybe when you said that it's almost like, mostly a lot of managers that you've come across kind of believe, okay, the way what you are at home is different from what you are at work. But the fact is that it's the same brain that you use at home that you bring into work. And in fact, that's even another story, because if managers will let people come in with their brain, so much innovation will take place anyway. But the whole aspect of balance is really letting people be their best. And for people, it will always be different. But it's also employees having I would say, the power or the autonomy and also the knowledge of how to create that balance where they're still very highly productive. So that if not, you tend to find that when things really get out of balance, the mindset kicks in and people start panicking. And that is where it goes really downhill. But it's everybody remembering that even when things get quite intense, can be stressful, with the right mindset, you can actually go through without feeling much stress at all, knowing that after some time, you will come back to that balance. But now you probably need to put in more hours, you probably need to put in more time for a period of time. But then as things calm down, as you maybe go through the change, the balance would come back. And I think everyone really needs to understand this, but leaders in particular need to be able to communicate this more effectively, instead of having the expectation that, put in all the hours that that time, all the hours in the day. It's not realistic. And that's where you tend to then lose the goodwill of people. And really, that's when you tend to then have people having a lot of mental health issues, anxiety, stress, burnout, and all that. So I think I'll stop there for now to see what comes through, but that's my initial take.
Yeah, I love that, Don. I love that. Just real quick, Donna, before you jump in, around the fact that calling the situation for what it is and normalizing it. It's what I heard you say from, okay, right now, this is what we've got to do. Yet, I recognize and honor the fact that this can't be our constant state, and we will pull back so that we have an opportunity to re-energize so that we can then come back at it again, right? And so when people understand that, you give them that sense of stability and certainty for the moment, and a glimpse into where they're going into the future as well. So I love that piece, Maureen, as well, that you called out and how that helps our brain. So thank you.
Yeah, and I really like your emphasis, Maureen, on the internal idea of balance. And Mary and I talk about this all the time. A lot of people are stressed because they're striving to create balance externally and take control of things that are beyond their control, when the truth is, as you said, Maureen, things are up and down all the time. And we can be more successful when we ask questions like, within my orbit where I function, what can I do to create that sense of balance internally that I'd like, instead of counting on all sorts of external things beyond your realm to instill that for you.
Yes, great. Donna?
Yeah, I'm going to dovetail off something, Amy was just talking about, which is, I think this myth is so scary and dangerous because it's not humanly possible, as Maureen pointed out. And that sets all of us up, especially women, I think, for failure. And then we just feel terrible about ourselves. And then we're in this repeating loop, which is very frustrating. And there are many other factors, I also think, that contribute to all of this. And the idea of balance, I'm just going to call it the idea of balance. I kind of think we should stop using the phrase work-life balance.
Yes.
The way I approach my life is, I know I have a strong work ethic. I like to do work that resonates with me as a human being. And I know I'm going to work a lot of hours because I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm a learner. I'm a strategic thinker. This is how I like to connect with my community. So I do jobs that I love. And that's the long story short for me. I've always followed the career path of jobs that I love. I've always had a strong work ethic. Maybe it comes from the fact that I grew up in a family-owned business, so we always talked work at the dinner table. I don't know. But, you could say of our family growing up that we didn't have that work-life balance. Again, it's such a huge myth. I think if you love what you do, that doesn't mean you love every aspect of it. Work is work. But if you love what you do, if you work towards things that make you feel like you're connecting to community, contributing to community, if you do the things that give you high value propositions, then I think, to me, that's the secret. And I think it's very damaging to use those old phrases that you've called out. And I think if we can get our peers and our workmates, our colleagues, to stop using that phraseology,
Yes.
I think it's going to be a very pivotal impact. But it's so deeply ingrained. And people see it as such a positive myth, but it's one of the most damaging myths out there, I'd say.
It is.
Yeah, so Amy, what
Totally
Amy and I
agree.
would say is we use the word centered instead of balance
I love that.
and intentional, right? And so whatever your center is, and as long as you're doing it with intention, which is what you just described, Donna, right? You said, I love my job. I know I'm going to work a lot of hours, right? I'm strategic. It's what brings me joy. There's intention behind that. And the other word that you used, I think is incredibly powerful, is community. And that's why I said at the very beginning that we have multi-relationship connections. If I was to look at you, Donna, and describe our relationship, and I had to use one word to describe our relationship, it would be very challenging to do that because we have a multi-relationship connection that is based around our community. So I love everything that you just said. Yeah. So Amy, you want to bring us through our next belief?
Yeah. So
havoc in our HCL. Yeah.
Start with the belief that we need to do away with because it's causing too much trouble. And that is, I must excel at all my responsibilities while controlling the work of others to be successful. So many people still operate that way, and especially the leaders who truly believe they have to control the work of others. This whole hybrid world is really creating a lot of anxiety for them. The new belief, and this again has come from what we experienced during the pandemic, I operate best when I live in my purpose, when I develop my strengths and empower others to do the same instead of trying to control them. So, why is this type of leadership harmful? That word control rather than the word empower. How does that create issues? What do you see with that, Maureen?
It's interesting because you see, when you try to control, a lot of times it's coming from a place of low self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And because you tend to find people who are trying to prove themselves. And that is why they tend to try to control others. The other
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it is that over time, I always say that every adult you find in the workplace is coming from some form of upbringing that they've been conditioned in a certain way. And one of the things about the brain is when you wire the frontal left part of the brain a lot, especially that serotonin area, that is when you tend to find people in wanting to control things. And it really comes from a place of perfectionism, wanting to be
Mm-hmm.
perfect, wanting
Yes.
everything to be done their way because their way is the best way, or they've done it,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way they've done it over years, so that's the best way to do it. So everyone has to do it that way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really a mindset, a habit, a behavior that they've developed over time. So it's really getting leaders in particular to understand, and this is where I think training comes in, and what we do becomes really vital. Because when people understand that the way you are is different from the way the people that you're leading are, and if you put your own control or your weight onto them, because they've wired themselves differently, there will be a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Or what they will do is what I said that, when we're talking about balance, they start leaving their brain at home, coming to
Mm-hmm.
work, and are just using yours. And that
Oh,
way
yes.
you lose the reason why you employ them. The
Mm-hmm.
skills that you saw that you employ them with, you lose it all because they leave that at home, come into work, and just do what you tell them to do. And
Yes,
that's the problem with controlling. So,
very much.
yeah, so if you really want to get the best, learn the people, understand who they are, use
Mm-hmm.
their skill. If there's a training that they need, that's where the
Yes.
leadership comes in. Because I always say a leader is the one that creates leaders after themselves. But
Mm.
trying to impose yourself on them, even we can't do it with our brain. Our brain likes control, and that is why
Yes,
we're constantly in conflict with
that's
our
right.
brain. So you can't, it will always be a problem to try and control people.
Mm-hmm. Always, yes. And what I always find interesting, and the people Mary and I talk to, the more they try to control, the more out of control they feel. And once we teach them the
Absolutely.
art of letting go and allowing and letting other people feel empowered and develop themselves, they feel more in command because they're not trying to do the impossible.
Yeah.
And it's true because when you really empower people, allow people to be empowered, then you actually do have control to an extent because then
Yes.
they will be their best. They will give you their best. Everybody would be in a good place. So
Mm-hmm.
you end up getting what you really want anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
How about you, Donna? How does this all strike you?
It's funny, I wrote down earlier some of the very same words that Maureen was using, and a big one I wrote down was understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the biggest issue we face is that leaders often don't understand who they've hired.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if employers take time to engage with their employees and learn more about them and how they work, that I think that's a big piece that we're missing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
married, Mary knows I'm married to a very smart woman who's a lifelong HR person. And one thing I've learned during our time together and just, talking about work in general, I think it goes all the way back to hiring practices and job descriptions is a big piece of
Mm-hmm.
this to talk about. But I actually think the old model is perpetuated by the fact that we're not communicating. We're
Mm.
not
Mm-hmm.
often understanding who we've hired. We might not take the time to find the right fit for the
Yes.
job. That usually goes further back to how have we described what the job is and how do we approach who we want to fill that position?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big, honestly, I mean, I worked in corporate America for almost a decade. I think that's a big disconnect that
Mm-hmm.
we haven't righted the ship on that. I think
Mm-hmm.
we still have to go back and ask ourselves, okay, we have all these tools at our disposal, all these, from Myers-Briggs to Clifton Strengths, right? So we can assess people, but
Mm-hmm.
are we really communicating? Are we really understanding what that means? Are we really trying to put the right person in the right position?
Yeah.
And are we describing what we need and what we want? Are we describing that job adequately
Mhm.
so that we can actually fill it with the right person?
Yes.
Because I think that would help a lot.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
a scary example of what you're talking about, Donna. I talked to someone recently who was interviewing for a job, and as she was sitting there listening to the HR director explain the job to her, it didn't sound right. And she said, for example, um, this candidate, that salary sounds too high for where I am, and those responsibilities sound way above what I thought I was applying for. And the woman kept saying, "No, no, this is the job." And then 5 minutes before the end of the interview, the HR director says to her, "Oh my gosh, I've been reading from the wrong job description." That's how out of touch this person was.
Horrible. Yeah.
Yeah,
And think about how that feels for the candidate on the other
yeah,
side of that. I think the other thing that the two of you, I'm just going to call it out a bit, is instead of telling leadership, we need listening leadership.
yes.
And spending more time actually truly, Amy and I call it reflective listening, where you're actually spending the time and truly listening to what the person is saying to you, not waiting for the person to stop talking so that you can then speak, right?
Right.
Right, because then you're leading into telling leadership. And then spending the time to actually paraphrase, like say back to the person what you think you just heard, because we're
Mhm.
constantly taking information in through our own lens, through our own experiences, through our own filters, and we may not get it right. And so it's a really valuable, and then when you take the time to play it back to me to ensure that you actually understood what I just said, and then you give me an opportunity to clarify, if you didn't get it, exactly on point in the way that I intended, or you ask me follow-up questions because you're curious and you actually care about me and you
Mhm.
want to learn more about me as a human being and what motivates
Mhm.
me and drives me or what challenges I might have. Like just a simple conversation like that has incredible impact and speaks deeply to what Amy and I, share with leaders as we're working with them around human-centered leadership. So thank you so much for those really thoughtful, insightful comments. So we have a few minutes left. So I'm going to bring us to our last leadership belief. The one that is wreaking havoc is that I advance when I dim my own ambition and ideas to appease others. Whereas what Amy and I advocate for is I advance when I trust and I assert myself, right? So I often hear this, especially with female leaders, that they hold back because they're afraid that they're going to upset somebody else. They're afraid of the conflict that might get created. And then there's oftentimes that there is real retaliation around inserting, yourself. And so some of it is about the fear that we create within ourselves. Some of it is because of our past experience and what has happened. So Donna and Maureen, has there been a time that you've dimmed your light? And when you've done that, what was the impact that it had on you? And then now, as you think about where you are in your own leadership, what is one thing that you do to help trust yourself and insert yourself?
I think one of the things, yes, in answer to your question, yes, there's been a time that I found myself dimming my own light, and that was when I was working with a huge team. And there was one man there that really challenged my leadership so much. So everything I said, he opposed. And that really made me almost kind of shrink away or pull back. And I had to really stop myself. Fortunately, it was when I had learned a lot about the brain. So I immediately realized what I was doing and just stopped and really stood up. And I think one of the key things for me was really going back to who am I? What are my values? And really come, it's almost like really
Mhm.
pulling myself back up to who I should be, as opposed to reacting to what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things, especially when I work with clients, is really bringing them back to that value of who they are, what they can
Yes.
do, what they've done in the past, to really get that dopamine flowing, because that is what helps them. But you're right, though, in the sense that a lot of times, a lot of women in particular would actually think that being ambitious is a wrong thing. And that's
Mhm.
because we, especially girls, we have been brought up with that high estrogen to wire themselves to be less in a way. So a lot of times we don't want to shine too much. You don't want to stand up for yourself. But one of the things that I've done, especially when working with people, and this is what I train my clients to do, one is to be open to receiving feedback. So create an environment where people can feed back to you, so that when you feed back to them, they take it better. But if
Mhm.
it's just you telling them what they've not done, or what just constantly you talking, they will feel that you don't care. They will feel that you're being too pushy, you're being too controlling. All the biases will come up. But
Mhm.
when you're really open, when you're transparent, when you're vulnerable, when you're open with them, but still staying in your power, when you give feedback, when they give you feedback, tell them to give you feedback. Even when it's really bad, take it on
Mhm.
board, so that when you give them, they will also be able to take it. It's that two-way thing. So that has always worked really well.
That's great. Thanks, Maureen. Appreciate
Mhm.
that technique. Donna?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and there was a time in my life, and if you know me, and I know you know me, Mary, it might be hard to believe this, but I worked for a nonprofit years ago, and I thought I was being self-sacrificing. I think a lot of
Mm.
this by taking the smallest office and I was
Mhm.
the executive director, and I took less pay than someone else in the organization, even though I was the ED. And when I think back on that now, I just think, like, what was I thinking? But I remember feeling like, oh, I need to, be self-sacrificing here. That I need to lead by showing that I don't need all these things.
Mhm.
And that was such a misunderstanding. And, it was the way my brain was interpreting things at that time in my
Mhm.
life. I think, to kind of wrap it up and bring it to current day, I think one of the issues with women, especially being too self-sacrificing at work, is maybe we all don't talk enough about or understand our roles. I think, we all think we understand what it means to be the boss or the leader or the executive director or the co-founder. But I
Mhm.
think one thing that I'm learning in this phase of my life is that we're not very good at defining for ourselves, our coworkers, our colleagues, our peers, for all the people that we come in touch with in our work life. If we define our roles more clearly,
Mhm.
I think we can set ourselves up for more success and start to move away from things like diminishing ourselves, feeling like we need to be
Mhm.
sacrificing, and taking charge, taking the ownership, because everyone understands this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my role, and I'm in this role because I'm qualified to.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that, Donna. It's a great way to end the conversation.
Mhm.
And I feel like there's a common theme that we've been sharing as we've been talking about each of the beliefs, and that is, first of all, checking in with ourselves and where are we and what are we
Mhm.
believing about ourselves, the other person in the situation.
Mhm.
And then this whole piece around communication and
Yes.
communicating in a way that builds common understanding and connection and community. Because we're together for a reason, and we probably at the end of the day have a common goal that we want to achieve. And so I
Mhm.
love the fact that you gave us some really practical tips on how to
Mhm.
achieve that, And I have deep respect and admiration for both of you. And Amy and I really appreciate you being with us today to have this discussion. So
Very
Amy,
much.
any closing comments that
Yeah.
you make?
Yeah, I think, this idea of having a common definition of what our roles are and what our expectations are and what these new beliefs are. All of this is so integral to moving through change. We're so distracted. There's a lot of misconceptions flying around. Employees are saying basically, slow down and listen. That's what they want. That's what all the research says. And there's a reason for that. Just like all of us stopping today in the middle of the day to have this discussion and clarify where things are. We have to do this more. We have to have conversations more and not just react to all of the demands out there.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Donna and Rain, for giving us very different perspectives on things, but from the same place. I think that Mary and I are coming from this idea of valuing ourselves and speaking our truth and honoring ourselves and honoring others as well.
All right.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much.
so much. I know we'll be chatting soon and hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you for everyone for
Yes.
joining us.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.